Hey, welcome to the Next Step Podcast. This is episode 10. We're excited about that. And my guest today is Matt Odom, who is my friend, hero, great American. Welcome, Matt. Glad you're here today.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And we also just want to make sure to be completely honest with the audience. We've got Xander here, his oldest son. Xander's in the background running point. So thanks for being with us today, Xander, as well, too. So part of what you did when you were growing up is that you were learning about how to take your next step with Christ. And there's a guy named Big John in your life that led you to jump on a school bus back in the day when you could do that and that kind of stuff. So in the process of talking about this, you also told us you're in the military. Tell us about your military career.
So I was in the Air Force for 7 years on active duty. I was stationed in Goldsboro, North Carolina to begin with, deployed to Qatar, and then we came back and I got an option of South Korea or Alaska. So we went to Alaska from there.
Was it even a choice?
Not really.
Never thought about it.
Because me and my girlfriend at the time, we were separated long distance. She was at college, and going to South Korea meant that I wouldn't be able to take her with me, or she could go to Alaska with me because, being in the United States, they can't tell her no.
Right.
So that was a pretty easy choice. And during that time, I was a maintenance management analyst, specifically focused on flight data and using that information to help leadership make decisions on which aircraft we're going to send to combat. If we've got 15 aircraft and we're tasked with sending 12, we want to use our information to send the best 12 to make sure they're going to get off the ground that first attempt. 9 times out of 10, when we're trying to get somebody a jet off the ground, that means American troops are at risk. And if we can get a jet off the ground immediately, there's a much higher chance of them coming home safely.
Wow.
So on a day-to-day basis, you feel like you're playing in Excel and you're messing with numbers and it gets redundant. But when you really think of the big picture, you understand how important the job is.
So from the time the pilot's called how fast they can get to the airplane and get it off the ground.
Yep.
How fast was that? Can you tell without giving away, or they have to kill you or something like that?
It varies. I mean, different deployment areas, your pilots are stationed closer to jets than they are in others.
Right.
So it varies.
I gotcha.
But I mean, within a couple minutes.
Wow. So we're talking about F-16s. What kind of planes?
So out in Goldsboro, I was with F-15Es, which are the Strike Eagles that we call the biggest F-15s. And then in Alaska, we had F-16s. So we played kind of Top Gun in Alaska, and we called Red Flag.
The Red Flag. I like it.
Other air forces around the world come there, and we teach them how to fly. And we pretend to be the Russians.
Right.
So all our call signs are like MiG-1, MiG-2, and we have aircraft that are painted in like Russian MiG colors. And in that big airspace, we teach others how to fly and how to deal if they were to get into combat with Russia.
How cool is that?
And it was awesome then to get to see all the different aircraft from around the world and meet different people from around the world. It's really cool.
What a great experience. I think travel is one of the greatest ways to learn, right? Because you're having to get used to new cultures and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
Wow. So tell us about some significant things that happened about you growing up. Because did you kind of grow up in church, or did you? What's your journey like?
So growing up there in Dean, Texas, there's not a lot going on. And we actually moved from the big town after I graduated kindergarten, which is called Wichita Falls. It's about 100,000 people, to Dean, which is about 20 minutes outside the city.
How big's Dean?
About 250 people.
Okay.
So super small.
Kind of like downtown Mount Holly.
Yeah, where I went to high school, my graduating class was 36 kids.
Wow.
So super small. But one day, me and my brother Justin were out in the front yard. I think I was 6 or 7. And this church bus come by, a little blue bus, and he stopped and asked if we went to church. And we're like, no. And he goes, well, obviously there's not a lot to do out here, so maybe you guys should try to come to church one time. We pick each other up. We pick all the kids up on the routes.
Yep.
And his name was Big John.
Big John. How old were you?
6 or 7 at the time. And so the next Sunday, he came by in the morning, picked us up. And we went to church, which sounds crazy in today's world. Some random people stop by, pick you up in a bus, and take you to church.
Yeah, that's right. Don't necessarily do that anymore.
Yeah, no, this is late 90s.
Yeah.
But so then that's how I got introduced to church, First Baptist Church of Dean in Texas. And then I went into the RA, the Royal Ambassadors, and I kind of stayed in church my whole life. until about high school. And I got to a point where when I went to church, it was for fellowship purposes.
Yeah.
There was nothing else to do. It was where everybody hung out. But I got to a point where just the message wasn't there for me anymore. I felt like I was hearing the same thing every week, and just nothing was there.
Right.
So I mean, I'd been saved and done all the things I was supposed to do, but I just kind of burnt out and left the church completely after that.
How many years of the journey was it before you came back?
So 2010, so we're talking 10 years.
Wow. So that's a pretty common thing. A lot of times people think, okay, I'm 18, I figured it out, I'm a Christian, I'm saved, I've got my ticket into heaven and that kind of thing. But there's something important about Big John that was really important and pivotal in your life, because he was somebody that consistently came and built into your life. And you think back on church life for you and your life in Christ, he was somebody that made an impact on you.
Definitely. Like I said, after a few years of us starting to go to church, we actually lost Big John he got a real bad gangrene infection in his leg and ultimately took his life. But at that point, my RA ambassador, he actually started driving the same bus. But at that point, I was so entrenched in the church at that point. Right. Until, like I said, 16, 17, just kind of had other things on my mind more important at the time. Yeah.
Well, understandable. You kind of go through that phase where you do that. So what drew you back? What drew you back to say, man, I really need God back in my life, and I need to pay attention to the fact that he's always watching over me and that kind of stuff, but I need to reconnect with him?
So this is a pretty cool story, to be honest. But when I was deployed, we did things over there. We had the Qatari military had their own checkpoint, and then we had an American checkpoint. And so they come on base, and like at that time I was assigned to a construction site, just escorting them around, make sure they're doing the right things. Right. So get in a vehicle with them. They had cleared the Qatari checkpoint. Get in the vehicle.
Same base. Qatari's going one way. America's going another way.
Yeah. So there's a Qatari checkpoint. So everybody comes up from off base, goes to that checkpoint, and then they come to the tent to check in for their construction site and pick up their escort. So then we get in the vehicle with them, and then we go through the American checkpoint.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Sitting in the truck with this gentleman and the military police, or we call them security forces in the Air Force, doing their thing. And I see the dog, and all of a sudden the dog sits down on our truck. When the dog sits down, that means they smell explosives. Okay. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, no. This is it.
I got my brother with me.
This is it. I'm not surviving this. And so chaos starts happening around us. Cops running around, they're calling EOD. And, at this point, I had been out of the church for like 10 years. There's mass chaos going everywhere. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just felt this calming presence over me. And I was just like, I just kind of sat there, and I was like, all right. The stress went away. Yeah. And in that moment in time, it clicked with me that while I left Jesus and Christ, he never left me.
Wow. Amen.
And so that was my big moment of like, while I ran, but he stood with me the whole time. And that was his moment in time to say, I still got you.
Yeah. C.S. Lewis used to say that we're searching for God is like saying that a mouse is searching for a cat. The guy's always got his eyes on you. So what happened? What happened to the explosives thing?
Nothing. They came in and they safely removed us. Truth be told, I never found out exactly what happened, but the guy in the truck with me seemed way too calm. Yeah. And was just still being friendly about things. So I don't think he truly knew that and whatever explosive was there. It was probably planted by somebody else that knew he was going on and off the base every day. Wow. But I never saw that individual again.
Man, that's something. So essentially you go through the Qatari checkpoints, you get them in the car with you, you take them onto the base, and then they would have dogs to come sniff around. That's wild.
Yes, it's just the American military being safe and saying we trust ourselves more than we trust anybody else.
Absolutely. I understand. Trust but verify.
Exactly.
Is what Ronald Reagan used to say 30 or 40 years ago, however long it was when he was there.
Thank goodness for that dog and our security forces guys sending around each day.
So from there, it was kind of like, okay, you had this calming effect. You had this reconnection with God. What are some of the things that happened over the next several years where you were just taking steps with him?
So, in Alaska, it was kind of difficult. We searched around, but there's not a lot of churches in Alaska, right? Especially if you're not native. And so then when we moved back here, We bounced around from multiple different churches trying to find out what we wanted to do. We went to the MEC church.
Mm-hmm. Good church.
And we went to the Mountain Island Charter School campus over there for a
Mm-hmm.
while. And when I was working at Maersk over in Charlotte, I had a coworker who went to Western Carolina, and we were playing softball together.
Okay.
And we got to a point where we needed some people, and he's like, I know a guy that, in the area that I went to school with who play. So he came, and he brought a few other people, and they all attended First Baptist Church of Stanley.
Okay.
And so they were like, we also have a basketball league, what we call the CSCSL.
Yeah. We participated in that league as a church.
I'm working on getting us back there.
Okay.
Talk to Brad about that.
Okay.
And so like, why don't you guys come to church with us? And so we're like, all right. So we went over there, and we actually went there for 4 years.
Okay.
And then a pastor change happened, and at that point, Xander also was getting to where he didn't like going, because he was with a smaller church body. He was kind of caught in the between. He was younger than the older kids, but older than the younger kids.
Right.
So he didn't really have a place to fit there. So when we've always known about the Point, and we live, like I said, in Riverfront. So when we started searching churches again, we was like, let's try the Point. So we went up. We came here last Sunday of October, 2022. And we haven't left since. Xander loved the first day at Kids Point. He was like, this is the greatest thing ever. We had to fight him to get him off the playground after the early service. And so we've been here since going on, 7 months now. We're
grateful for him and for you and your family. So how's our church helped you to take your next step in your journey with Christ? Anything in particular? Is it relationships? Is it a thing that we've done, or anything like that?
So we were in small groups at First Baptist Stanley. So when we saw the small group opportunity here, we jumped right into it. Kids Point's been great for our son.
Yeah.
My wife serves in Kids Point as well. So,
fantastic. What grade does she serve in?
She's kind of a floater.
Okay.
But most of the time she does, I think, 3rd and 4th grade.
Okay.
But she's very beneficial to the program here, because she is a special education teacher. So if they really need her in a certain classroom because of a special needs child, she can definitely bounce right in and feel right at home and make it easier for everybody.
That's awesome.
And you also give the parents of that child some relief that there's actually somebody trained to work with special needs kids there, so that they feel like their child is safe.
What a great gift. Thank you, Amanda, for doing that. So I have a sister who has cerebral palsy and a niece who has Down syndrome. So I'm very grateful to people that reach out to those people that have special needs and take that upon themselves as a mission. And being the teacher of the year as a special needs teacher, that's pretty impressive there.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
She doesn't get the recognition she deserves. She never will. But she knows that, and she knows that that's her calling. She never really wanted to be a teacher, but everywhere she's been, it's kind of drawn her there. So.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing with us as far as that's concerned. And as you put everything into practice that you've learned in life, you're a well-traveled guy. You've lived in Texas and Alaska and Qatar and Goldsboro, right? Which is the cultural center of Eastern North Carolina, I guess. At least some of the folks in the Air Force believe that.
Yeah, it's a brutal world over there.
It is. I'm sure that it's not easy to be in the military.
It's not.
The routine that you have to go through and following the authority structures and all that kind of stuff is certainly challenging for people, because we live in a world that's very different than that.
Very much so. And there's a lot of things that you sign on dotted line that you say you're going to do, but you may not necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
But by law says you have to do these things.
Right.
But it's an experience I'll never regret. Like I very much appreciate my time in the military.
Right.
And it really helped me learn who I was. With some high stress situations, and just being uprooted in any given moment. You never know where you're going to be when you go back to bed that night.
And it really makes you more intelligent, because you have to conquer different kinds of environments and different kind of things like that, right?
Yeah, especially going overseas, you have to go through some cultural training and try to figure out how to do things where you're not gonna necessarily disrespect their culture.
Right. What's an example that you had to learn in going overseas?
Oh, a lot of it is like they don't use their left hand for anything over there.
Okay. Even if they're left-handed.
For the most part, yeah.
Wow.
It's
so if they're left-handed, they still need to do it with their right hand. Otherwise, because left hand is viewed as evil, right?
They use that for bowel movements.
Yeah, right. For taking care of business.
And that's so they don't shake hands. But there's just a lot of eye-to-eye contact's not a big thing over there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pork, for example, we eat bacon and sausage here, and you know that's a sin in their world in the Muslim culture. And there's times I felt bad going to the dining facility where there's Muslim individuals been hired to work in the kitchen, and then they're serving us pork, and you just know like it's not right in a way.
Right, because you're respecting their beliefs.
We're trying to trampling on their beliefs and their religion by saying, "Hey, we're in charge here, so you're going to serve us this food that you don't believe in."
Right.
So there's a lot of different things, and our American Western culture, we don't force our women to cover head to toe.
Right.
Like they do, and it's just things like that. If a Muslim woman, especially in Qatar, not so much Qatar, but like Saudi Arabia, if she's talking to a man in public she's not married to, she could be killed on the spot. So
if they're serving you in the line, do you say thank you or just nod your head, because they can't talk back to you culturally?
It's a case-by-case situation. When you're there and you go every day, you kind of develop relationships with some of these people, and you do get to talk to some of them. But you just kind of feel that out as you go. And if you're there for a couple of days, if you're just in transit, you just let it be.
Right.
But if you're there for 6 months to a year, you're gonna by default you're gonna find a relationship with these people to an extent. So.
Right.
And you get over there and you really learn that life's not that much different. We have a lot more bells and whistles here, but everyday life is very similar. Right.
We have to sleep. We have to eat. We have to work.
And the media is evil, and it really is. And you get over there and you realize that the whole world doesn't hate Americans like the media tries to portray them to.
Really.
Kids come up and they just want to play soccer with you, and they appreciate everything you've done for them. And you really see that it's the extremists on both sides that really cause most of the problems. Right. That most people in every culture are just like most of us. They want to take care of their families, provide the best they can, and they're just trying to make it through each day. Yeah. And hopefully see the next day.
Is part of what you would do over there, would there be times where you would go interact and play with kids? Something like the military trying to do like a social service project or something like that?
Not so much in Qatar. Okay. Like in Afghanistan, there's a lot of interaction with villagers. Right. But where I was in Qatar, we did get to mingle some because we were allowed to go off base in civilian clothes. We had to be back on post by a certain time. Okay. But we were able to go down, and go in and see like Doha, and kind of that way really see their culture that way too, and just how they build buildings and how they definitely show off how rich they are in Qatar. You're walking around the mall and there's Maserati dealerships inside the mall. Wow. Gold nuggets the size of $50 and the floor everywhere. You're just walking all over it, and you're just like, must be nice.
It must be nice. But you've learned a lot of cultural intelligence that people are very much basically the same as they are here, but they live it out in a different kind of way.
Definitely.
Interesting. So tell us about your work in Gaston County Schools and some of the things you're excited about, some of the projects you're working on.
So I'm a big sports guy. Okay. So when they put me in charge,
Philadelphia Eagles, one of your teams?
No, that's the wife.
That's the wife.
That's Amanda. I'm a Ravens fan.
You're a Ravens fan. All right, good deal.
She grew up right outside Philly, so she's a diehard Eagles fan.
I just saw that in your Facebook post. Yeah. I was learning a little bit about you.
I'm not an Eagles guy.
I actually got to go to the Ravens game, the Monday night game they played after they had won the Super Bowl. Oh, yeah. I had a speaking engagement in Baltimore that day, and a friend of ours got tickets to go there, and I saw Ray Lewis
do his squirrel dance, as he called it.
Squirrel dance and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. That's an electric environment. It's right next to Camden Yards, too. Yeah. It's really a cool
Harbor's a great place down there.
It is a beautiful place, absolutely. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
You're good. But so they've put me in charge of renovating a lot of these sports facilities across this campus or across our county. They've been neglected for decades.
So that's what this focus is this summer.
It's been my focus for the last 2 summers. Once we get graduation over, and I told him, you sure you want to do this? You put the guy from Texas in charge, where we have a much higher standard of sports facilities. Right. Growing up in Texas, the Dallas Cowboys train at high school facilities because
they're that good.
high school football is just, I mean, it's religion in Texas.
Yeah.
And, we've got $60 million football stadiums for high schools in Texas. So it's just, I've got standards, and I was like, we're not meeting them here. And my ultimate goal is knowing my kids are going to play on these fields.
Yeah.
So I want them to be in the best shape they can be down the road. So.
Good way to think about it. So are you in charge of the middle school project across from Parkwood?
Greer
Middle School?
I am not. That is our other project manager.
Okay. So. That's a big deal.
It's going to be Greer.
Building a school beside a school and then destroying the school?
So that's what they did in Stanley.
Okay, right.
They they built the new school where the sports complex was, and then they tore down the old school and put the sports complex there. So we're doing the same thing at Greer.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So does it excite you to be able to go and to look at spreadsheets and to see what you need to buy and see when it needs to go and who's going to be doing the work, and you enjoy that kind of linear kind of thinking?
Yeah, so I've always been in the data analytics world. This is the first job I've had that wasn't truly data analytics all day, every day, playing Excel. But I enjoy being out in the field with the project manager and being on construction sites. And even though you get some of the similar projects at different schools, you have individual unique challenges in every school because of how that school was built or when it was built, the materials used, asbestos, things like that. Right. There's always a challenge of figuring out how do we get from this design we have in our head to actually getting it implemented and finished.
Yeah.
And then every especially when you're doing anything in the ground, you never know what you're going to uncover.
Right.
And wires and things that may not supposed to be there, and then you find them and you got to figure out where they come from. What do they feed? Are we going to kill an entire school if we accidentally kill this line?
Yeah.
So things like that.
Or the neighborhood around it.
Yeah, or the neighborhood around it, or you're going to upset the neighbor when you put up a new fence.
I love it.
So there's nonstop challenges, but it makes it every day different.
So there's really important principle there too. T.P. Barker is a member of our church family as well too, and watches online, lives in Mountain Island as a matter of fact. But he was an Army Ranger. Okay. One day I sat down with him. I said, "Okay, so tell me what it's like to be an Army Ranger." So I got my notepad out and I said, "Tell me what you learned." And so he said, "We learned two things." I went, "Okay, I guess I can write those two things down." He said, "First, they taught us how to play well together." Yeah. And the second thing they taught us is that nothing goes according to plan. You've always got to have a plan B and a plan C. Life's a lot like that. So you're running into projects, right?
All the time. There's no project goes as planned. You always run into some situation, and it could just be weather where it puts you behind time,
right,
and behind schedule, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right, you can't fight the weather.
No, you can't control the weather. That's what we always say.
Absolutely. So, as we draw our time to close, Matt, so is there a particular part of the Bible, or is there a life verse that you have, or something that has really meant a lot to you? Maybe even just recently, or something you thought about ever since you met Big John and he picked you up on the school bus.
I grew up in the "What Would Jesus Do" era, so that's one thing that's always stuck in my mind.
You had your WWJD bracelet?
Yeah, we all had them, right, back in that time. But so that was it, and then I've always had a motto that I've always lived by, and it's just not stressing over things I can't control.
Huh.
And essentially those things you can't control, as a Christian, we're hoping Jesus will take care of that for us, and that's what we pray for. But if I can't control it, what's the point of stressing over it and bringing myself down every day?
So what's an example of that in your life that's made practical? Like, man, this is where that really landed it for me.
Like a big one for me is politics.
Politics, okay.
Like, what's going on in the political world and how the extremists are screaming at each other, how nobody's, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Well, a lot of this stuff doesn't pertain to me on a day-to-day basis, so why am I going to stress over it?
Right.
Especially you get high at like the presidential level. Who's president doesn't mean a thing to me in my day-to-day life 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Where you look at local elections where they actually impact your everyday life.
Right.
People need to pay attention to that more than
Absolutely.
they need to at a national level.
Somebody says all politics are local. So if you don't vote, make it a regular practice of voting, because people like this guy have sacrificed their life and been sniffed out on bomb trucks, to make sure that we're able to live freely, right?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So don't stress out about politics. And all politics are local. It's interesting that usually when there are no big elections, meaning there are no federal elections, presidential elections or whatever, that the voter turnout tends to be a lot lower.
Yeah.
But it said it should really be the opposite. You 100%. Should pay more attention to who you're electing locally and that kind of stuff.
Without a doubt. It means much more in your day-to-day life at a local level.
And it's part of our responsibility as citizens. I think C.S. Lewis also said that the states responsibility is to help make the lives of citizens possible for them to live and make choices according to what they please, as long as it's within the umbrella of God's authority too. So, I mean, I think of government. You're in government now, in local government. You've been in national government. You know what it's like to be under authority and to do that. That's really important. And so, when you have those kind of authority struggles, and where you're asked to do something that is not necessarily your conviction, but you know you're following through on the authority, is there anything you've ever done that kind of you said, I'm sorry, I can't go do that, even though I've signed this document or whatever, because Jesus wants me to do something different?
No, luckily I've never been in that situation. I know people who have, but thankfully for my own well-being, I've never been in that situation. So
right.
Hopefully never will be. Yeah,
absolutely. Because that's kind of the place where they call civil disobedience takes place, where you got to decide, I'm going to do this instead of that. Yeah. Well, I'm just grateful there are people like you and Amanda and your two great kiddos that are living here, and Xander's here with you today, right? He's over there playing video games. What's happening, man? Good to see you over there. Did you win? No? Okay, well, that's okay.
You're not always going to win.
That's right. You're not always going to win. That's another great life lesson, too, isn't it? Let me throw out some things and put you in the hot seat for a minute. So, Eagles or Ravens?
Oh, Ravens.
Okay. So
all day.
Just want to make sure everybody knew this. So if you look on his Facebook profile, he puts the Philadelphia Eagles in there to please his wife, right?
She's the boss. We all know that.
I like that. So they are the champions, right? They were
in the Super Bowl this last year. Came
absolutely.
Up a little short. But.
Yeah, that's okay. But they've won it before, the Philly shuffle and all that kind of stuff. And the Ravens have obviously won it as well too. So night or day?
Night.
Okay. Breakfast or supper?
Depends on what's on the menu.
All right, tell us what.
But like I'm a biscuits and gravy guy. I love biscuits and gravy. But dinner, I mean, steak, pizza, you can't go wrong with it.
Of course, you got biscuits and gravy for dinner too, right?
Yeah. We have biscuits or breakfast for dinner quite often, especially on Sunday nights a lot of times because we get up and come to church for the 9:30 service, so we're not really having breakfast that morning.
Right, you got to have your bacon and your eggs and your grits and stuff like that. It's interesting. When I grew up, after my father died, we went back to live on the farm with my grandparents, and my granny was like 4'10" and weighed like 90 pounds, but she was making bacon and eggs for breakfast. She was making pork chops and gravy at lunch. She was making fried chicken and rice at dinner time and that kind of stuff. And she would be sitting at the other end of the table eating Special K. That's why she lived longer than most of the rest of us. But anyway, okay. Winter or summer?
Oh, summer, because fishing's better.
Alaska or Qatar?
Oh, Alaska. Hard, not even a question.
McDonald's or Hardee's?
Oh, I'd rather have Hardee's.
Okay, all right.
I'm not a McDonald's fan.
I like that.
Other than this guy. I spend all the money at McDonald's because of the kids.
The Golden Arches. It's that toy, man. That's what goes
Happy
along
Meal,
with it.
They love it.
That's right. King James Version or English Standard Version?
King James.
All right. I like it. Old school, man. That's good. Good deal. Dallas Cowboys or Houston Texans?
Neither.
Because you've lived in Texas, you don't like either one of them.
I don't like either one of them, but I despise the Dallas Cowboys. I grew up an hour from their stadium. I dislike everything about them. And, my wife's father, first thing he asked when I walked in the door was if I was a Cowboys fan or not, and I said no, and he's like, all right, he's allowed to be here. So.
Years ago, I had the privilege of being in a one-on-one. I had breakfast with Zig Ziglar one day. He's from Texas, and he used to say, if a boy grows up in China, he grows up to believe in Mao Zedong. He says, if a boy grows up in India, he grows up to believe in Buddha. He said, if a boy grows up in Texas, he grows up to believe in the Dallas Cowboys. But not all Texans,
Not all of us.
I love it. So, beach or mountains?
Beach, because I love deep or saltwater fishing. So.
Fantastic. Let's see. I was going to say Republicans or Democrats. We don't want to say that, right?
Neither.
And we're not going to pick it. We're not going to pick on that. How about pick another branch of service? Navy or Marines?
They're the same thing.
Oh, they're the same thing to you. Okay. Army or Navy?
Army.
Okay. All right. I'm just thinking you've had relationships to work with those people and that kind of stuff. So you've got an hour on your hands of free time. Television or book?
Oh, I don't read, so television. say live sports.
Live sports, that's even better.
Yeah, because I'm a sports first for everything for me.
Wherever of course, and network TV is kind of a thing of the past,
Yeah,
even
it's
cable
all streaming,
TV.
streaming options now. So.
Absolutely. So tell me, as we close today, what's something you're excited about that's going to be happening in this next year? I know we're excited about the projects you're going to be doing at the school. How about for your family?
Well, in the next year, I will finish my master's degree, so I'm looking forward to that because school is killing me right now.
Fantastic. Where are you going and what's your degree going to be
So
in?
I'm going to the University of Arizona Global Campus, and I am getting my master's in business administration. So
Fantastic.
my MBA.
That's awesome.
Got 6 classes left. So.
6 classes left. So will you finish in the next calendar year?
Yes. So
Take
next
2
March,
twos, or did you take one for 6 weeks? Or
I'm
what?
doing 6-week classes.
Okay.
So I've got next March will be my completion date.
Fantastic.
Thank goodness.
We walking, having your thing on?
I doubt I'll go to Arizona. Just give
okay.
me the degree.
Just send me the diploma.
Send me the diploma so I can say I have it.
Right. I'll take it to the school system and say, give me the raise, right? That's great. So to close out today, what I've heard you say very specifically is control what you can control and leave the rest to God. And don't worry
100%.
about things that are not under control, right?
That's how I live my life.
I can tell that, man, because you're kind of like a duck. You are calm on the top of the water, but underneath you're paddling like crazy.
Yeah, and my wife, she always says I don't show emotion, so
Yeah.
she'll agree with you 100% on that.
Man, well, just thank you for being part of our church and for sharing with us today and for you and your family. And it's great to have you with us.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for
All right.
having me.
Thanks a lot, man. See you next time for the next edition of the Next Step Podcast.